Chapter 15, the real estate market. I want to talk to you about the physical characteristics of real estate, and there's going to be three of them that I want you to know. First of all, real estate is immobile. And what I'm saying is that, remember the surface, subsurface, and air rights? That's what we're talking about. Those are immobile. Now, can you move a house off of a site? Yeah, you can. But that's not what we're talking about. So, real estate is certainly immobile. I'm going to talk to you a little later on about highest and best use, but just let me say this. Highest and best use simply means what can we do with a property that's going to cause it to be worth the most value to us. Another characteristic of real estate is that it is indestructible. Once again, can you destroy a house? Yeah, you can. But I'm still talking about the surface, air right, subsurface rights that make up real estate and real property. And lastly, real estate is heterogeneous, which means every parcel of real estate is uniquely different. And I'll tell you how we show this. Every parcel of real estate has its own personal, private identification that we call a legal description. When we talk about the economics of real estate, we're talking about something a little different. And there are certain economic characteristics that make this market work. And let me tell you what they are. It's supply and demand. Supply and demand makes the world go round. Supply and demand actually creates value. And when we have a high demand on something and a low supply of something, values typically go up. But we have a high supply of something and a very low demand of something, prices typically go down. So what I want to do is separate demand from supply. Let's analyze it and see how that affects what the price mechanism is in our market today. To begin with, on the demand side, as prices increase, I want you to think about this. As prices increase, demand goes down. And the reason for that is, if you think about the big picture, a lot of people can afford a $100,000 house. A lot of people can afford a $200,000 house. Maybe not as many as 100, but there's a lot that can do that. There's a good number that can afford a $500,000 house. But now when you start hitting that $1 million house and that $5 million house, what's happening to the numbers of people that can afford it? So as prices go up, that demand side is going to go down. It's a given. Also, as our income goes up, and here's how this always works. We buy out of emotion, and we're always chasing the Joneses, I guess is a good way to put it. But as our income increases, we always want a little bit bigger house. At least most people do. So the more income we make, the bigger house that we get. The easier mortgage money is, the more likely we are to borrow. If you don't remember this, I do. Between 2002 and 2006, the subprime lending laws were in effect. People didn't have to qualify for loans. They didn't have to prove they had income. They didn't have to prove they had a job. They simply signed a document saying that they could afford the loan. Well, when you had that kind of policy set by the government to be able to make loans, what do you think is going to happen? A lot of unqualified people are going to borrow money. The supply side, on the other hand, is very volatile depending on the market. And what we're seeing right now on that supply side, skilled labor, skilled labor is going to migrate to those areas that they're going to get paid the most. So if we're in an area where we have a small supply of a particular type of house being built, most of the people that specialize in that is going to be in an area where there's a lot of that building going on. And in terms of construction money, we got to make sure that we have the construction money. One of the things that happened in 2010, the legislation by the federal government kind of thwarted the ability for builders to be able to borrow money. And when builders can't borrow money, obviously you're going to have a supply side shortage. And that's basically what we're experiencing now. I think that right now in the current condition in 2018, you're seeing a lot of the legislation that was created to thwart the ability for builders to borrow money is being unspun, and you're seeing that those regulations are being done away with, allowing people to have a better opportunity of being able to borrow money to make these developments happen. Also, along with labor, we need to also look at construction costs too. Because when you talk about materials, as materials go up, I've got to tell you, everything else, the cost of building, and it goes back to that whole thing that if the cost of materials go up and the price of homes go up, then that demand side starts to slide a little bit. I'll give you a good example. Lumber in recent, this is 2018, it changes at different times, but right now we're seeing lumber prices starting to go up. And I'll tell you why. It has to do with us buying lumber, a lot of our lumber, from foreign countries. And sometimes things happen that cause those prices to go up and down. I want to talk also about the word situs. This word situs is so important because this is how we describe those physical characteristics of real estate. That every parcel of real estate is uniquely different. Remember we said the uniqueness of location combined with immobility is known as situs? Well, it goes back to what we talked about, the heterogeneous aspect of it. One legal description for every piece of property in the United States. Also, another topic that you're going to need to understand thoroughly is supply and demand as it relates to sellers markets and buyers markets. Are we in a seller's market? Are we in a buyer's market? Are we in a neutral market? Bottom line is, the easy way to remember this is, whoever is in the minority is going to be in charge of the market. If it's a seller's market, what that means is there are fewer homes and more buyers, which means those buyers that want that home are going to have to step up to the plate and pay for it. In a buyer's market, on the other hand, what we have is a few buyers and a whole bunch of homes. Well, those people that own those homes, if they want to sell them, they got to get real about that, and they're going to have to adjust that price accordingly to make sure that they're one of the sellers to those buyers. I also want you to remember that vacancy is a key to this industry. The vacancy rate helps us tell us how well we're doing, just like apartment complexes. If you're running a 5% vacancy, you're probably doing extremely well as an apartment. But if you're running a 20% vacancy as an apartment, you've got a problem somewhere and you need to correct that problem. And that's all I've got for chapter 15 and the real estate market. It's a short chapter, not a lot in it. It's worth going over. A lot of good information about supply and demand. So let me now go ahead and do the review on this particular chapter. Chapter 15, review on the real estate market. The physical characteristics of real estate are, they are immobile, they're heterogeneous, and they're indestructible. Situs is the uniqueness of location combined with immobility. Seller's market versus buyer's market, whoever is in the minority is in charge of price. Highest and best use is the most profitable use of a property. Demand, these are the people that want housing. As prices go up, demand goes down. Supply, on the other hand, has to do with the products of the market. As material prices go up, the price of housing also goes up. But just remember that as the price of housing goes up, that demand side also goes down. And that's all I have for the review for chapter 15.